Today on Locked on Rockies, more projections for the Rockies, and they ain't kind.
You are Locked on Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked on Rockies podcast for today, the 6th day of February in the year 2025. I'm your host of the Locked on Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked on Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. And if your team is the Colorado Rockies, guess what? You're in the right spot, because that's what we do around here each and every day, free and streaming on your favorite streaming services and on the Locked on Rockies YouTube channel, where you can be part of the show. You can fire off your Rockies hot takes. You can let me know what's on your mind when it comes to the Colorado Rockies. Today on the show, the PECOTA rankings are out, predictions are out, and not good. This is the worst. You've got the worst projection for the Rockies yet. And historically bad is what these projections are saying. And we'll dive into that and more, and just, can they hit this mark? What happens if they do? What happens? How can they avoid it? How can they change the narrative? We're going to dive into all of that and more coming up on today's episode. Before we do that, though, today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Okay, so this is the PECOTA standings, the PECOTA standings here. And according to MLBs.com definition here, I'm just going to read from the page here. Also a backronym for former Major League leaguer Bill PECOTA. PECOTA is a baseball prospectus system for projecting player performance. The acronym stands for Player Empirical Comparison and Optimization Test Algorithm. It was developed by Nate Silver in 2003, and Silver ran the projections, which were owned by Baseball Prospectus from 2003 to 2009, before ceding full responsibility to Baseball Prospectus itself. PECOTA is perhaps best known for its use of comparable players. In predicting future performance, PECOTA uses historical comparisons of players with similar career paths. PECOTA is usually primarily for projecting the performance of individual players, but it can be applied to the entire team as well to project records. It uses predicted depth charts to establish the projected runs for and against each team before gleaning a projected win total from that. Obviously, no one is claiming that every prediction will come true, but PECOTA is widely regarded as one of the most accurate predictors in the history. The industry, mind you. Okay, so that's the jargon, right? That's the description here of what this is. So, with that in mind, the Rockies are projected to win 55 games, losing 107. That makes them projected to be the worst team in baseball by 7 to 8 wins. And so if that happens, if the Rockies in fact lose 107 games, this would be the worst season in Colorado Rockies history. And while I do understand that the talent on the roster is not really up to snuff, it's not really a team that you look at on paper and think it's going to be able to take down the Dodgers, take down be an upset team. They're stating through this that this is going to be the worst Rockies team in the history of the Colorado Rockies. And I think there could be an argument, certainly, with again, a team that hasn't brought anybody in that outside of Estrada, a team that's making minor league deals, a team that's moved on from some players like Brendan Rodgers. There's a whole lot of things that, yes, I can sit there, but just like we talked about a little bit yesterday, I just don't believe that this version of the team is worse than last year's, worse than the years before that. We've talked about, it's just fascinating to me that these projections really don't like none of these projections that we've seen with the Rockies here factor in a big, or I shouldn't say factor in, anticipate. That's the better word. Anticipate a good season from German Marquez and Antonio Senzatella enough to change the narrative there. And maybe I'm too focused on the return of these two pitchers, but these are two pitchers that we've seen have success. These are two pitchers I am way more confident in than some of the arms the Rockies have been sending out there. Mixed with the fact that I mean, while you have doubts on the roster, if Nolan Jones even produces half of the first season that he has, that's still better than last year. That's still a 2-WAR season, and that's still being able to complement and pair with, I think, guys that are ready to make steps and make moves. This isn't a team that I think is going to sit here and be winning, 80 ball games or fighting for a playoff spot, but it's pretty eye-opening when the simulations go, and this is, they simulate a lot. This is a whole bunch of simulations. This is a lot of numbers that are being crunched. And for the Rockies to not only be the worst team in baseball, but to be the worst team in baseball by a 7-game margin, I'm sorry, I'm just not buying it. I'm not buying that the White Sox are going to be able to immediately turn around everything that's going on within that organization and everything that's going on with them, even with some of the players, the good players that they have on that team. I'm not buying that Miami is 7 games better than the Rockies, a team that has had a very similar offseason, and a team that's going to be going up against 3 teams, if not 4 teams, that are very good. The NL East is going to be another bloodbath here. According to these projections, Atlanta and New York both projected to get 90 wins, Philly at 87, Washington at 73. That's better overall. That's better overall records throughout the division than what the NL West is projected to be. The Dodgers projected at 103 wins, Arizona at 87, San Diego at 82, San Francisco at 77.6. That 87 projected win total would be good for 3rd in the projected NL East this year. Yet Miami is going to be good enough to avoid 100 losses after the fact that they've shipped players away. They were bad last year, and the only reason the Rockies didn't have a better record with them is because the Rockies couldn't close out ball games. The team that was one of the worst teams in baseball history, the Chicago White Sox, are immediately going to be able to wave a magic wand and get back to a 60-win season. I ain't buying that. Like I ain't. I don't think that these another team that said that after that was going to cut payroll. These projections have the Rockies being 14 games better than last year's Chicago White Sox team. 14 games better than last year. And just in general, this is a White Sox team that they're looking at and saying this is going to be a better team this year by a huge stretch. 41 wins, and they're projecting them to have 20 more wins next year. 20? That's a huge shift. That's a huge flip. If the Rockies improved by 20 wins from their prior seasons, they'd be in the 70 wins. They'd be in the 80 wins. A 20-game swing for didn't the White Sox get rid of some of their key players? The highest ranking player by WAR were Eric Freddy and Garrett Crochet. And isn't Crochet now pitching for someone else? Yeah, he's with the Red Sox. So you're going to lose your second best player on the worst team of all time. Yet you're going to be better than this Rockies team. And again, maybe that's me just the Homer hat's on. But that's shocking to see. That's shocking. And remember, this is an algorithm that focuses more specifically on individual players and going from there. but it still is like, whoa. What do you mean? Like I guess maybe I'm a little too bullish on some of the Rockies stuff, but I didn't think it would be this bad. Because the one team that I will say that's going to be better, that I think is going to be the improve, and I think these rankings kind of show that as well, are the A's. I think the A's are going to be a better team, even with the weirdness there that they're talking about, with all of that going on there. But I don't know. I just, there's a lot of concerns, I guess, and it's interesting here when you look at the advanced thing. The predictions do say Zach Veen 105 plate appearances, Sean Boussard 105. Let's see, Greg Jones getting 35 plate appearances. This is kind of the interesting thing to see what the projections are saying. The Rockies are going to get guys, how they're going to get guys in, and get guys, or how often they'll see the field here. I just don't think that this team is, this team isn't good by the traditional standard, right? But I am so kind of just, it's just weird, I guess. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. I guess you tell me, folks. Are you buying that the Rockies are in that bad of a place? That instead of hitting the bottom of back-to-back 100-loss seasons and ricocheting off the bottom and improving, the Rockies are digging a deeper hole. If the Rockies do, in fact, go on this pace, if the Rockies finish the season 55-107, which would be crazy if the projections actually, nailed it right on the head. Drastic measures need to be taken within the organization. If you have 3 straight 100-loss seasons, capped off with the third one being the worst season in franchise history, change has to be made. There will be zero excuses, none. In fact, if it's another 100-loss season, the experiment is over. You don't just sit there and say, oh, we're just going to keep our heads down and keep grinding. No. The Rockies can't afford to be this bad this year. And I'll explain why coming up next in today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes Gametime. If you need tickets, last-second tickets ahead of time, maybe just, when you're feeling spontaneous, Gametime's got you covered, especially when it comes to attending an NFL playoff game. It's an unforgettable experience that brings fans together. You can see all the energy and excitement for yourself when you head over to Gametime and use the easy-to-use Gametime app to find that event that you want to go to, because it doesn't have to just be sports. It can be comedy. It can be theater. Whatever's going on in your area, Gametime's got you covered. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I've used Gametime plenty of times. Gone into hockey games, gone into baseball games. Whatever you need, they got you covered. And you're going to be able to know exactly where you're sitting with the great view from your seat, and you can check out that all-in pricing feature that you can toggle right there on the home screen. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast for free and streaming on your favorite streaming services, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. And if your team is the Colorado Rockies, guess what? You're in the right spot, because that's what we do around here each and every day. So we're talking about the PECOTA ratings, and I hope I'm saying that right, the PECOTA ratings, if you want to be specific like that. projecting that the Colorado Rockies will not only be the worst team in baseball this year, but the worst team in franchise history. And so the easy question is, how do they avoid this? It's the same stuff that we've been talking about all offseason long. It is going to take the Rockies being a better team, being a clutch team. This is a team that's going to have to maximize the roster that it has. This is a team that's going to have to be able to develop and get these guys ready to adjust and hang at the major league level. This is going to be a team that needs to be able to make adjustments, as now this young bullpen that was showing promise at the end of last season, there's film on them. They're watching them. They're making adjustments. They're going into this season with an understanding of what you can and will bring to the table. How the Rockies avoid this comes down to not only just performance here, but it's how do the Rockies adapt? How do the Rockies change the lineups and put in batters in certain situations against lefties and righties, road versus home, who's hot, who's not? It's going to take the managerial staff and the coaching staff to make sure that they are getting these guys in the right position to succeed and play competitive baseball throughout the season. And there was the argument last year where at the beginning of the season and the way things started, it did not look like the Colorado Rockies were prepared. It did not look like the Colorado Rockies were in a position and in a spot that the Rockies were going to be able to break the funks, break the bad habits that they were doing. This year, if you want to change the narrative, if you want to shake these projections, if you want to show something not only to the rest of baseball, but to your fans that are hungry and desperate for some good news about the Colorado Rockies, it has to start day one. No slow starts. Hot start immediately right out the bat. And again, this isn't Paul's path to the playoffs for the Rockies. No, it's how do you avoid being the worst team in your franchise's history? It's avoiding these projections that continue to get more and more negative as the offseason has gone on. This is a team that right now the FanDuel future for win totals is lower than last year. This team, if I just don't see it on paper as I'm hoping that the bad habits and the poor performances by 5-run leads in the bullpen, trailing games constantly to start games. Hopefully, these are the things that are going to be adjusted and changed throughout this year. But the hesitancy, I can see why. You can see why all the projections and the things are hesitant, because we can sit here and just play the what if game and say this and that. And, we know Nolan Jones is good. We know that, we know that Tovar and Doyle can do things and Ryan McMahon's. It has to be shown and performed on the field, and it has to be performed throughout the whole season. Consistency, the word that I keep bringing up over and over this offseason, that's what we have to see. If you don't want to continue to be a cellar dweller, a basement team, a laughing stock of baseball, you have to take advantage of every opportunity that you're given this year, just to show and prove, to build that confidence, build up that energy within that clubhouse, so you're not a team that's used to losing, a team that deals with losing. This should be a team that's now hungry to start shifting the narrative and make the incentive for the Colorado Rockies at the trade deadline and the offseason of 2025 as a let's buy and add, because we know we got something going on here. It is another example of this season is nothing short of a prove-it season from the top down. Dick Monfort needs to prove that he's putting the right people in the right position to be successful. Bill Schmidt needs to prove that he's building and developing talent the way that he anticipates it. Bud Black needs to show why he continues to be handed the keys time and time and time again. And the players have to step up. Ezequiel Tovar has to play at an all-star level. Brenton Doyle has to play at an all-star level. Nolan Jones has to play at a level closer to his rookie season. Chris Bryant has to contribute. Thairo Estrada has to contribute. Herman, Antonio, Kyle, Austin, and Ryan all have to contribute. And there are plenty of question marks and doubts about the skills and the abilities of these players to do so. But here it is. It's what the Rockies are facing this year is not a fight for the playoffs and for a championship. They're fighting for their relevancy. They're fighting for their reputation. They're fighting for their future. Because if the younger core of Jones, Tovar, Doyle mixed with whoever steps up and becomes the everyday right fielder, if those guys aren't taking the steps forward that we need, then then 2026 is in jeopardy. 7 is in jeopardy. 8's in jeopardy. 9's in jeopardy. All of these years are in jeopardy if these guys can't take steps forward on the path and continue to develop into all-star caliber players. It is going to take a tremendous amount of effort from the entire organization for this team to stop this 100-year loss season skids and start putting themselves in a position where it's time to add on to this team. It's time to invest in this team instead of selling off pieces and going bargain barrel minor league signings. Set the tone that the Rockies need to go out and make a splash and make it convincing for a pitcher. Maybe it's not going to be the greatest pitcher, but an elite level pitcher to come in here and change things up. But you're not going to be able to do that if it's status quo, business as usual, the usual classic Rockies BS. If the Rockies go up and they strike out 10 plus times a game and they're trailing by the second and they're already down by 3 and XYZ, it is business as usual, and all of us will be sitting here dreading the fact that the 100 losses are going to come. We're going to sit there and suffer through 2 weeks where the Rockies win 2 games. So as much as I want to say this projection is wrong, as much as I want to disagree with it, as much as I want to sit here and continue to just blow the straight hopium, that's a reality check. These, again, the numbers, it's not definite. It's not 1 for 1. But these numbers and these simulations and all these nasty, these bad projections we've heard about for the Rockies this year, it's rooted in the numbers. It's rooted in performance. It's so we can't just sit here and be completely left open mouthed and shocked that the Rockies are projected to be as bad as they are. So what is the team doing when they see these things? How is the team going to adjust and get themselves in a position where they're not this team? They're not as bad as everyone thinks. How will they prove the doubters wrong? Well, that's still to be seen. And we're going to know sooner rather than later. The first 2 weeks of the season will set the tone for the entire rest of the year, just as last year's tone was set on opening day. All of possible hope and optimism that I had going into opening day was trashed because of how that game went and then how that first month of the season went. The tone has to change. So much has to change for the Rockies to avoid this. Let's take a look at the rest of the division and some interesting takeaways there from these rankings as well. And we'll wrap things up right here on Locked On Rockies. Before we do that, though, I got to let you know about the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes PrizePicks. The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to make it even more exciting than with PrizePicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded, PrizePicks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action. Here's how it works. You pick more or less on at least 2 players' projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. PrizePicks even has a free pick for the big game where Patrick Mahomes only needs to throw 1 yard to win. Pair that with one more correct pick, and you're cashing out. This week, you can look at the board and see what's up. Maybe you're interested in what's going on with Travis Kelce, thinking he's going to come up big in the big moments. Maybe you're interested in the Saquon Barkley rushing yards. You can see all the fun for yourself, as well as the promo tabs to tail any of the super sweet Millie winners big game lineups. If you tail a lineup that goes 3 for 3, you can win a split of $1 million in promo funds. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast for free and streaming on your favorite streaming services, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. If your team is the Colorado Rockies, then you are in the right spot, because that's what we do around here each and every day, free and streaming on those streaming services. And we've been talking about the PECOTA standings here. Baseball Prospectus, by the way, baseballprospectus.com/standings if you want to see everything for yourself there. So we talked a lot about the Rockies, talked a lot about the issues there. Let's take a quick look around the division and see what the projections are saying there. And let me know if this shocks you to hear. They're projecting the Dodgers to be the best team in baseball again. The only team to win 100 games. The only team to win 100 games by a solid margin as well. 103.8 wins is projected here for the Dodgers. I mean, and what can you say there, right? I wouldn't be surprised. Wouldn't be shocked at all. Wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if that's the way things shake out for LA. The big question mark, I think, though, with that we've seen with the Dodgers as they've added and as they've had these great teams is health. Health is going to factor into this team. I mean, can everyone stay healthy? Can everyone have the solid years? Can the Dodgers be able to Dodgerify everybody? The jury will still be out there, but there's really no reason to doubt the champs and no reason to doubt them being able to go back to back. The interesting development here, at least in the standings of the NL West, would be Arizona leapfrogging San Diego over here with a projected 87 wins. Again, Arizona, a team that doesn't get as much buzz as it should. It's a team that has been in the mix basically for the past 2 seasons. Last year, if you remember, they were facing a very similar season that they were having to their World Series run, and almost making it to the playoffs yet again with another strong second half. And they've made some interesting moves. They've gotten better, especially when it comes to the pitching staff. I don't necessarily think that this is all that crazy to think. I think Arizona, every game between Arizona and San Diego is going to matter this year. 100%. Just like, San Diego and the Dodgers, I know San Diego's been able to go back and forth with them, but it's going to be key for for both of those teams, for both Arizona and San Diego. They're going to have to take care of business against each other, because I think those two are going to set the tone for the wild card possibilities here as well. If you're looking at the rest of the National League's projections here, when you're looking at teams that would make it into the playoffs here, just on the projected records, Atlanta gets in, the Cubs get in, and the Dodgers get in as division winners. And then you get the Mets, you get Arizona, and then just barely above, you get San Diego in there as well with that last wild card spot there. So there's going to be that second spot, that second place spot in the NL West is going to be a really, really good indicator of who's going to end up, I think, as a wild card team next year, because I do think these other teams are just not going to be able to keep up. If you've listened to the show, I have long expressed doubts about the NL Central. The Cubs certainly will be a good team, an interesting team, and projected to be 10 wins higher than Milwaukee this year at 90 wins for the Cubs this year. I still don't think the Cubs are going to – I still don't think them being the best team in the Central means that they would be the best team in the West. Now, Chicago's projected 90 wins would make them the second-place team in the West. I just think if the Cubs had to play the NL West teams consistently, more than they already do, because I know we get a couple of series no matter what anyway, you would see that I think the NL West just has more depth and more talent there on those teams. And same with the NL East. I think the Central is clearly the weakest division here in the National League. And so nothing too surprising, I think, with the East, except maybe Philly dipping all the way down here to 87 wins. That's going to be a really tough division. I think Atlanta's looking for a bounce back year here, looking to get themselves back into the postseason and get themselves back to being that dominant team that they know that they feel they are. But New York's added. New York just got Alonso back. It'll be interesting to see how the Mets are going to factor into that. It'll be really interesting to see how the East shakes out here too when it comes to those wild card spots and how the West there, because man, the division games just are going to matter so much, I think, for the NL East there, especially. Same with the Central too. I mean, those games are going to matter. But the NL East, I think that fight for the top spot over there is going to be a good one for the rest of the year. So How do you think the Rockies avoid the worst season in franchise history? Let me know in the comments below, because that is going to do it for this episode of Locked On Rockies. We'll be back to 5 episodes a week starting next week. So our offseason break is coming to a little bit of a close, so be ready for more Rockies pod action coming your way next week. And folks, remember, I want to talk about the things you want to hear. So please let me know what's on your mind by letting me know in the Locked On Rockies YouTube comment section. And until next time, folks, want to let you know that Locked On MLB is perfect for your second listen of the day. Same with Locked On Broncos, Locked On Avalanche, Locked On Nuggets, and Locked On Buffs, all available free and streaming on your favorite streaming services. Until next time, this is Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.